We are very lucky to have Jonathan with us tonight. Jonathan Poe of Pinkleton's Curious Caramel Corn, as you see right here. I think it'll be very interesting to see some of the points of differentiation between Jonathan's story and how he's created his company and his brand, and kind of the terrain that he's navigated to get to this point compared to some of the other folks that we've heard from earlier. So at this point, I'll hand it over to you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan, and this is my brand. When I first started with the GYRM program, I had every intention of manufacturing my beef jerky, which is the best beef jerky there is. I went as far as registering the domain name for Portland Jerky, did the DBA, and then the class for COGS came up, and I realized that in order to manufacture and sell the jerky the way I made it, after distributor and broker and markup and yada yada, one little 1 ounce piece would have ended up being about $15. So I, which was a real eye opener for me. So I agonized for about 8 hours. Actually, I did a weekend road trip with my best friend. Like, what am I going to do? This sort of little dream I had isn't viable. And he brought along a bag of his grandmother's homemade caramel corn recipe, and I'd never had caramel corn. Not caramel corn, I'd had caramel corn, of course. All the caramel corn I'd had been like, you know, at the merry-go-round on the Santa Monica Pier or in Cracker Jacks. It was sort of like beach treat, not made with good ingredients and stuck to your teeth and had old maids or, you know, unpopped kernels in it. This stuff was different. It was made, you know, just hours before, and over the course of about 2 hours, I finished this giant, like, you know, gallon bag, just like shoving it in my mouth. I was like, oh, butter, sugar, corn, what could be cheaper? So I started, you know, and that was a good idea at first. I started playing around in my kitchen. So I have a food background. Food and design background. I did go to culinary school. And I went into mad scientist mode and started just started deconstructing recipes and reconstructing them. And after a couple weeks, I don't want to say it was just a couple weeks, because it was a lot longer than that, I had an aha moment. And which went back to, I veered away from a traditional caramel recipe and moved into a toffee recipe. So I started using about 3 times as much butter as like the recipes that use the most butter. So that then I ended up in that balance between like butter and sugar and fat and salt. And I took a batch out of the oven and let it cool and ate a whole bunch of it. And the next day went back to it and tasted it again. And it was really good. And I was like, that's it. So that was sort of the beginning of the caramel corn manufacturing process for me. It was really based off of like tasting something that, you know, at the right time when I really needed to taste something phenomenal, and needing to generate a value out of this workshop. And I'm glad I did.
I'm guessing it's also the time when you saw your costs start to increase because.
Well, yes, there's that. So thank you. So so originally the idea was to go just like, you know, butter, sugar, corn, and then as I was working with it, I do like premium ingredients, and so I decided to go organic. So organic butter is twice the price, and then I insisted upon cane sugar and, you know, corn syrup, which is you have to use in candy making, is pretty cheap, but I didn't want to use anything that was genetically modified. So the only non-genetically modified corn syrup that I could find that is manufactured in bulk is from Austria. So I started importing Austrian corn syrup here. So those COGS, which were like, you know, the margins were fantastic in the beginning. My cost got really, it jumped. Then there was the good packaging and stuff like that. I tend to be a little frazzled when I speak. I ended up creating a caramel corn that is incredible. It's also the most expensive caramel corn on the market by virtue of the ingredients that I use. The amount of labor that goes into it. It takes us about 3 times longer than most people to make theirs. And packaging costs are pretty high, but they're about to get a lot lower because we're about to bite that bullet and do our first big packaging buy, going from ordering like 3,000 bags at a time to ordering 30,000 bags at a time, which will save us 50 cents per bag. So that's huge.
Do you have the sales right now to justify ordering 30,000, or you kind
I
of
have the faith.
you're rolling the dice?
I am rolling the dice. So it's the past 4 years have been really interesting. Our sales have been steady. I look at my numbers a lot. I have a fantastic bookkeeper who comes over and sits with me for like an hour or two a week, and we look at everything and reconcile everything. And we've had a really consistent year-over-year growth. This past year has been a little flatter, but that's because we found ourselves able to purchase a building last year to manufacture out of. So rather than going the route of a co-packer, we decided to, when I say we, I teamed up with one of my best friends who, she and I did this program together and developed 2 candies simultaneously. And we were both 2 separate companies, yes. So she started off with a toffee called Oregon Bark. And about 2 years ago, we had outgrown the facilities where we were manufacturing. I was manufacturing at Kitchen Crew, and she was manufacturing out of a basement. We said, let's find a commercial lease, and spent 3 to 6 months looking for 2,000 square feet. Went through which is really hard to do in this town, because everybody wants a sort of like that size of space that they can build a commercial space in. After going through the leasing process with 3 different landlords and having all our tenant improvements and stuff redlined, we're like, why are we going to spend $40,000 to build a kitchen, which in 4 to 5 years we're going to outgrow? Why don't we just buy our own? And so we pretended we knew what we were doing and pooled our resources and found a shady realtor who talked us into buying a building. It's been great. So as I said, when I say sales were flat, I spent a year focusing on the build out. It was a really hard market to do construction in last year. Portland is exploding, but that's not talking about the food product. So let's get back on target. First time I made caramel corn.
I say even talking about the evolution of your production.
Yes.
So go back to when you were at Kitchen Crew, or even before, and when you stepped up to get into Kitchen Crew, what was a typical day like for you then compared to what is the typical day like for you now that you have your own facility?
So when I started this business, I drove a Jetta, and it started in my kitchen, as most people's do, and I quickly outgrew that and then had to get legal. So I approached Kitchen Crew and started there on an hourly plan. So I'd be like, I'm going to come in for 3 hours on a Friday night, because it was cheaper on a Friday night than it was during the week. And I was watching my numbers so hard then. I'd be like, I only worked 2 hours and 45 minutes. Can I not be charged that extra $3? That worked for a little while. I was distributing out of my apartment, which quickly looked like it didn't work very well for me.
So I'm sorry, just even backtrack just for a second. So you're saying it worked pretty well. Were you at the end, were you showing up with ingredients in hand? Did you have?
Oh, okay, so yeah, so I mean, a typical day would be, I would drive out to Larson's Creamery in the morning and pick up a case of organic butter, go to cash and carry, pick up sugar, I was always driving around with a 50-pound pail of corn syrup in my car until I went ahead and bought shelf space at Kitchen Crew, which you paid for monthly. That was a great step.
And did finished product come back with you, or did you leave?
The finished product came back with me and was packaged in my apartment at first. It was a long time. Everybody bends and turns corners and stuff in the beginning. So then we started packaging on site, and I got a warehouse space. So we would take the finished product to a small warehouse space and distribute out of there. So I spent, in my Jetta, like for 2 years, I had this triangle. It was sort of like, Larson's Creamery, Kitchen Crew, warehouse space. It was just like I was always doing this, and then distributing on top of that. That was one of the main reasons that we decided to purchase a building.
At that stage of the game, sales-wise, were all of your accounts, would you say, within the greater Portland area?
Oh, yes and no. I very quickly, one of my first accounts was The Meadow, which is a salt shop on Mississippi, Northwest 23rd, and they had a store in New York. And by virtue of that store in New York, I got picked up by a couple of stores in Boston and some in Dallas.
And so just even to get more specific on that, how does that happen? Does that mean that a buyer from a store in Boston happens to be in New York and stumbles upon a bag and then calls you?
At that point, all my marketing was word of mouth. It was, and people picking up a package and trying it and being like, either taking it to their specialty food store and being like, you have to buy this, or deciding to get it for their own store.
And it's definitely something I'd like to get into more as far as right now. I mean, I think you've made reference, in conversation that your product's available on the East Coast, in Massachusetts, in New York. Just how that process, took off and how and where, how far-reaching is your product currently?
We're bi-coastal. We've had.
And are you just relying on the USPS for that?
All our retail stores, we ship FedEx ground. It's just, we're a big, relatively light product, and that's the way to go. That's the way to go. 2 years ago, FedEx ground switched from weight-based to volumetric pricing, which was a kick in the gut, because what used to cost like $12 to ship went up to like $20 to ship. So I had a few stores drop me because the shipping costs got too high to the East Coast.
And how does that work? Do you split shipping costs, or is it their responsibility?
It's all on them. Okay. Yeah, it's not not in my numbers to
take on more costs.
To take on more costs, not right now. We've got.
And touching upon your numbers, I think this is one of the more interesting aspects of what Pinkleton's has going on is how you've positioned yourself in the market. Can you speak to that and maybe talk about the pros and cons?
We are the most expensive caramel corn there is, but we are also there's a couple others now, but we are we were the first to feature just organic butter, strictly non-GMO corn syrup. Our entire product is non-GMO. The vanilla we use costs $240 a gallon. I mean, every ingredient we use is like top notch, and the stores that we're in let their customers know that. And I definitely, I have a line sheet that lists all our pluses and our value-added aspects to the stores. We used to stamp the front of the bag that said, "Made in Portland, non-GMO, organic butter," but it just started looking a bit too busy for us. Some of the grocery stores, like not New Seasons, Whole Foods, has said that if we are to go in them, they would like that. Those they're called call-outs on the front of the bag, saying what the bonuses and the special parts of it are. We're moving to something that will pop on the shelf. It will be bright and eye-catching, but without being colorful. It's just we're moving to basically a metal bag, which sounds strange, but when you see it, it's going to be amazing.
Well, I mean, there's this whole perception of value with your product. I mean, I think when you break it down here and spend, some time, through conversation and explaining, between the quality of ingredients, and I love the way you were saying how it's a product to be savored, not just devoured. That all makes sense. But how do you communicate that to the consumer when you're not physically there to do that?
By our cute little descriptions on the back. Elevated, sophisticated, curiously addictive, vintage flavor, pairs beautifully with, it just, the words you use, people pick up something, if there's very little on the front, they're gonna turn it over. So we're hoping that we're gonna have more real estate on there to communicate that, but we are still gonna be sticking with the minimal, design. So many brands out there are over-branded, and
your branding is very important to the
Yeah.
product because of trying to sell something that is worth more than the majority of your competition.
It is, and it's not because we're making money hand over fist. It's just
you're investing in the ingredients, and and so how did you 4 varieties? How did you settle on the 4? Were you mentioned earlier about your days as a mad scientist? Did you have a whole number of varieties and then had to narrow it down to 4?
I've gone through a number of flavors, but we've had these 4 since the get-go. It's salted vanilla was the first flavor that I developed, and it was just the one that made me go wow. Then I wanted to go with something a little more traditional, and we developed the salted molasses. I come from LA, and I have a love of all things spicy, and I grew up on Mexican food. And so we developed the spicy Mexican cocoa, because I like the savory, chocolate, hot, and orange cardamom scotch, which is one of our most popular, was based on a morning pastry I had in Amsterdam. And there's something beautiful that happens when you boil orange zest with sugar and butter. It's magical, and then add cardamom. It's incredible.
Which is your leading seller?
Salted vanilla, but
Yeah.
it is 60% of our sales.
And speaking about sales for a second, it sounds like your niche is within the specialty stores, the specialty markets. How does that process compare? I mean, do you find it a lot more laborious, as far as having to speak to all these individual independent stores?
I love it, actually. There are days where I'm just like, oh my God, I'm a glorified delivery man, because it's so much of my self-distributing is I go drive to FedEx every day, drive to the post office every day, make deliveries every day. So when I get the chance to interact with new customers, new vendors, it reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I know my product better than anyone, and I'm able to talk about it with love and gusto, and hear people get excited about it. I send people samples.
And typically, when you from the first time that you make contact with a potential client of yours, how many times until you're making that first delivery? Describe the process itself. Is it does it take several months to get into a store, or is it really like, hey,
no,
here, try it?
It's usually within 2 weeks. So I will hear about a specialty food, Valley Wine and Cheese in Nevada. They heard about my product. I sent them some, and they tried it, and I had an order to them within 2 weeks.
I mean, it's interesting because it sounds like you always start off whenever we're talking about any of this, they heard about my product. It's not you as much picking up the phone, cold calling, and sending out bags of samples. It's more responsive.
So that's for yes and no. So I do, whenever I travel quite a bit. It's one of the reasons I love this business. It's at a point right now where I can sort of run it from a computer. But I travel with a case, and I will always have a few bags on me, and if I see a specialty food shop that I could see it in, it's like, you know, if you can see your product on a shelf, you should approach the store and be like, this belongs here. And I drop samples off with a business card, and then I'll follow up. Like, did you get a chance to try it? So I've picked up maybe a dozen stores just doing blind drop-bys.
And then following up.
And then following up, or if they don't follow up first. Sometimes before I even get to my computer, they'll be like, well, the bag was gone within 6 minutes. So we opened it, everybody in the store says we have to have this.
And I noticed your product recently at PDX at the airport. And so is there a story behind how it got into the airport, or was it just another typical sales for you?
It was, so we started at the Country Cat. Somebody at the Country Cat decided they were going to have a little specialty food market at the airport, and they're like, oh, let's call Pinkleton's and see if they'll sell to us. And I was like, yeah, of course. And that has been one of my best sales leads in terms of not just other specialty food stores, but retail customers, because people will pick up a bag before they get on a plane, they'll eat it on the plane, or take it home, and then they'll start ordering from my website. And they'll be like, we picked up a bag at the airport, we thought we were crazy for spending this much on a bag of caramel corn, but my God, it's good. It's been but I paint a very rosy picture sometimes.
Now you well, except for when you were talking about distributing, you mentioned before that you kind of felt like a glorified delivery person.
I do. I drive a 4Runner now, not a Jetta.
Do you have like specific goals, or is there a specific number you need to hit to where those days of self-distribution are a thing of the past, or is it an important part of your business to be the face of it when you're dropping it off, etc.?
I think I will always self-distribute in Portland because I love my customers so much. I mean, I love taking my stuff into PastaWorks. I love talking to the people at the counter, or Providore now, talking to the people at the counter, and it's fun. It's like you feel like this. I'm bringing people candy. I mean, they always smile. I'm like, okay, but we did just a couple weeks ago buy our GS1 barcodes, so which is what's been holding me back from approaching distributors and grocery up until now, is having the certified barcodes.
It's the UPS, I mean the UPC codes.
UPC codes. So it's, you can go to a place like, dirtcheapbarcodes.com or whatever, but those are recycled barcodes. And Whole Foods won't take a recycled barcode. And that's that's sort of our next push, is into the high-end grocery stores. So we bought, GS1 is sort of like the internationally recognized line, and there's like $750 for 100 barcodes, and it just seemed like a big chunk of change to me.
Is this the only packaging you sell your product in, or did you also sell it in bulk format?
We sell it in bulk by special request. So like Ebb and Bean, the frozen yogurt place, they buy it by the Cambro. So we sell it by the ounce. We also do a bag that's half that size. That's a half-pound bag. We do a 4-ounce bag specifically for gift basket companies, and that's in corporate gifting, but those are not for retail sale. The margins on those are so small that we like.
And speaking about developing that line of your business compared to the wholesale to retail, gift basket companies, corporate gifting, how do you contact those potential clients? Is that just, because obviously you can Google gift baskets in gift baskets Portland, you'll get 10,000 responses. So
you will. There's 3 or 4 big ones here, or ones that I particularly like working with. Give Portland Gifts, Glow Gifts, Drawing a Blank. Then there's a place, West Coast Events, Vibrant Table Catering. I mean, these places do big corporate events, and they'll order, like 300 custom bags at a time, which makes me very happy just getting those. out the door.
When you say custom bags, are you throwing a different name on there?
My name's always on it, but sometimes they'll have, I'll redo the label on the back saying, this is for Nike, this is for, Bill and Ted's wedding, or whatever it is. Let's see, I've got more notes. Absolutely.
I'm interested in hearing more specifically about your grocery retail business. So you mentioned you're in Whole Foods.
No, we're at World Foods right now. World Foods in the Pearl. Okay. So I want to be in Whole Foods. Growth. We couldn't grow while producing at a kitchen crew. The numbers didn't add up. The more we produced, the more it would have cost us. And I have 2 employees. They were fine with it, but I wasn't. I needed to start giving myself a stipend. So now that we have our own dedicated facility, which can theoretically run 24 hours a day, I can handle bigger numbers. I didn't want to say yes to grocery and then not be able to deliver on a big order. Because if you're on the shelf and then suddenly you can't keep the shelf stocked, it's terrible.
So I guess I'm wondering, why you think you'll be successful in a grocery store. Is there anything, are there any indications you have that that's going to be a really good sales channel for you? Have they told you that they want you? I guess why I'm asking that is because I know of a local candy maker who, one of her first accounts was a bunch of new seasons, and it's a pretty premium product. I heard you just refer to Pinkleton's as candy, and I'm wondering if you see it as candy or more of a snack item. And
I'm not really sure what sort of corner of the market we've got. It's a candy coated popcorn, but it's toffee. So on many levels it is candy, and people think of it as candy, but it's sort of like the next level. It's people who think nothing are spending 10 to $20 on a bar of chocolate. It's on that level, and there are the customers at New Seasons who will do that. There are the customers at Whole Foods who, there's going to be the sort of the medium priced Dagobah, but then there's going to be the beautiful Criollo chocolates that people savor piece by piece.
This person who I'm thinking of, her experience was a little bit different because of the price point, and customers who were going to shop for a box of cereal and a gallon of milk weren't willing to buy
right
a $15 bag of candy.
Right. So it's I'm more confident moving into it now because since we've been around for 4 years, people are used to seeing us around town now. I mean, if they go to World Food, we do well at World Foods. We do well at, I'm not going to refer to Elephant's Delicatessen as a grocery store, but it's, the people who shop at sort of the specialty food stores do their grocery shopping at places like New Seasons and Whole Foods. So it's, there's the brand familiarity now.
Right, and probably they don't really see it as taking a risk on something anymore.
Right.
Because they've had it, so
right.
they know it's good. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And then there's the demo.
Right. Cool.
Have you done demos with the small specialty stores?
I will. So some of them, I do them at Elephants. I do them at Pasta Works, or I keep calling it Pasta Works, Providore. Foster and Dobbs occasionally will have a Meet the Makers event, and I'll do them there. I haven't done any demos at Salt and Straw, but we're just sort of a grab and go item there. But if people ask me to do a demo and they're within a 45-minute drive, I'll do it. I do demos we're at a number of vineyards, so I'll go out and do a little pop-up at a vineyard. Those are fun. You leave happy.
I know we're starting to get a little short on time. This is obviously great information. I think that a lesson that we can take from hearing Jonathan speak is in regards to the positioning of your product. I think that you made what seems to be a very wise decision early on in terms of the quality that you were going to put in, and this whole perception of value, and there's kind of no shame in your game in making a high quality, high end product when some would say within the same category there is much cheaper items that are much lesser. And it's great to see that the decision you kind of made 4 years ago, that you're sticking with it, and it's actually moving forward, and it's growing year over year.
I've seen the other caramel corns all raise their prices since I've come on the market, which has been
But have they raised their ingredients? That's the real question.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
But there's just I did have just a couple more notes in terms of best advice, little things. Get your GS1 if you have a lot of faith in your product. Get your UPC codes. Make sure they're certified, because it's.
And that's what now, 700 and something?
$750 for 100 barcodes.
I believe you can buy 10 at a time.
You can,
Yeah.
you can. But there's, so when you think, so it's not just like 4 barcodes. You also need a barcode for the case that it's in, and then you need a barcode for the palette that it's on. So it's like, and then if it's a mixed palette, like those 10 barcodes, if you have 4 products, go really quickly. But also, I just want to say, if you've got to love what you're making, and really look at it, because there's a big difference between making something 1,000 times and making it 100,000 times. I mean, it's like there are days where it becomes mind-numbing, and you're like, what am I doing? And when you start to get that burnout, hire people, bring them on. It's like, even if it means don't pay yourself a little bit, just bring on people so that you can. In my case, I brought in people so that I could still be the face of my company, so that I could go and do those customer interactions, because that's what excites me. Doing the demos and the street fairs and seeing people react. Find ways to keep yourself super excited about it, because with a specialty food product, once you've developed your recipe, people don't want it to change. And I'm very much an entrepreneur. I never make the same pasta twice. I cook eggs different every, this seasoning, that seasoning. But once you've got your recipe locked down, you can't really fiddle with it. If you fiddle with the ingredients, it still has to taste exactly the same. So it's just be prepared to expand your product line, or just know that you're going to be you've got to lock it in and keep it that way. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much.